Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon.
Welcome to an episode of Conversation with James Stoner, Jim Stoner of Fordham University. I chuckle as I reflect on this very, very fast 35 or 40 minutes when Jim and I get started. His mind just goes lickety-split in so many wonderful and connected directions that I could have and probably should have said very little and just let him talk, but couldn't help it. He just bubbles with energy and makes you want to say something and get more bubbles. So when you Google Jim Stoner, you're going to see a long legacy of publishing and other very key roles. But what you're going to hear today is someone who is still very much in love with the practice of teaching. Will be focused on sustainability, which I admire, and I think you will too. Here is Jim Stoner.
I think I've been waiting for a chance to have this recorded conversation with Jim Stoner for 30 years. Not that we haven't talked in 30 years, but I recall that I first met Jim on a wonderful, one of those serendipitous moments when he and I were on a train leaving Connecticut and heading for Philadelphia for a Mid-Atlantic Organizational Behavior Teaching Conference. I don't know, did I ask you to let me sit next to you, Jim? Is that how we started? But anyway, the point is that from that very moment, through that conference and on through all of these years, there have been very wonderfully productive occurrences where he and I have met up, maybe at a National Org Behavior Teaching Conference, maybe back in Philly, maybe at the Eastern Academy, and otherwise. And every time I meet Jim, he's got a new excitement for me to ponder and consider. So let me try a word out on you, Jim, and then we'll let you start talking about you. I thought of the word expander before I brought you on. Expander. And I think I might even have that different definition handy. If I don't, it's basically something that takes anything and makes it larger and makes it more available and more visible, more intriguing. And back when you and I first met, you were very passionate about total quality management and world-class organizations. And that led me through your introduction to the Duran Institute, to Joseph Duran himself, and some wonderful things. Most recently, however, I met you, one of those other moments, in a webinar, and you were, before that, we had the Mid-Atlantic meeting virtually, and you and your colleagues from Fordham presented your enthusiasms for the MacArthur Award and for sustainability. Boy, I've already said too much. What do you think about being an expander, Jim?
There's a wonderful quotation from a poem by Bill von Buskirk, which I might be able to pull out in a moment. A little phrase. Bill is a wonderful poet. And he has a bunch of phrases in his poem, Man Made Out of Words. And the phrase is, wind that moves the dream along. That's what I would like to be. The wind that moves the dream along. It's a little bit, it reminds you, of course, of The Wind Beneath My Wings, that song.
Of course.
I've been talking with a friend about Bill's poetry recently, and he's the one that actually, you mentioned poetry before we started. He's the one that probably caused me to start writing a little bit of words strung along the left margin, which is a bit much to call what I write poetry, but it's fun to write. And so what does it mean to be? I think kind of what you're talking about is in the category of a diverger from the Kolb learning styles. and that
Mm-hmm.
I just see things very broadly and connectedly. And I'm terrible on details. I'm so bad on details. My wife pointed out that there's been a new beautiful bouquet on the dining room table for 3 days. I still haven't seen it. I can't see any dust around the house either. But I do see connections to everything. And that's a curse and an advantage. It's fun. But that's what comes up for me. You talk about being an expander. You want to put it back to you?
Well, I got a lot of thoughts bouncing around, but we can ground it for a moment in the results that you seek to achieve and do achieve with your students at Fordham.
Say it again.
Your students at Fordham, I think when you first meet them, I think your hope is that they will have expanded their awareness to reach out toward where you see the world in a larger
connection. Okay.
I like the wind behind my dreams a great deal, but as I'm thinking of expander, I'm also thinking of the connection between what you said about having a bigger mind and seeing a lot of connections and your aspiration for your students at Fordham to have them arrive with one worldview and leave with a more expanded worldview. Am I putting those thoughts in your head, or is that the way you see it too?
No, that's very accurate. And I have another quotation.
All right.
But I'll have to put it up for you. It's from George Bernard Shaw. You've probably heard it before. Maybe I can go find it also. I can't believe I could find the poem I wanted in 30 seconds or so. But maybe I don't think I sent that to you today, this particular quotation. George Bernard Shaw. And, it is.
In fact, Peter used to do this when we'd record conversations. He said, I have a poem that comes to mind, and he'd be searching around in his bookcase while we're still recording. And so you're following in the very fine footsteps of Peter Vale and his love of quotes and poems.
I just sent this to people yesterday, I think, so I could dig it out, and I carry it with me now. I'll tell you the part I really carry is the end part, and I reply it. I put it with me. But here's the whole poem from Bernard Shaw. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being thoroughly worn out before you are thrown on the scrap heap, the being a force of nature, instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. And we were talking, leading people in organizations, folks at Fordham in the business school, which is the name of a group composed by a committee. I was struggling a bit, but that's what we're called, leading people in organizations. And about what we wanted to do with the new Principles of Management course and our whole curriculum at school. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to create people that would fit that George Bernard Shaw quotation. Wow. Now, in reality, what I carry with me also is the last part. And there's many times, and yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was clearly a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making me happy.
That was you yesterday?
So I think when it works, you're quite right. What I really want people to go out and if I have one talent, and I'm not sure I have that one, I sometimes can help people see possibilities that they don't see themselves, and that I can encourage them to go out and do something about them. It took me a long time, but a very long time. But I think probably when I was just chair of MED, maybe, and it might have not been until I was chair of MSR, that I realized that whenever anybody did anything, whatever it was, my reaction was always, "That's great, terrific, thank you." And then sometimes it was a okay, now can I straighten up the situation?
Yeah.
that we got ourselves into. But
Yeah.
it was always great job. Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah. But helping people see possibilities, that's exactly what you did on that train ride for me. I was a rookie. I was just breaking into teaching OB at Central Connecticut State. I granted I had the time with Peter Vail and got my doctorate under his leadership, and that was fine. But I had been away in Maine for quite a while, and then returned to Connecticut to resume my career here. And at that point, I think maybe you were not only very welcoming, but at whatever I must have presented, you were there and you enjoyed it. And you said, "Hey, Dave, that's pretty creative. Keep doing it." So it worked for me. It worked for me, Jim. And I suspect it works for your students, for your colleagues. Tell me a little bit more about that name that you guys gave yourself, Leaders in Organizations.
Okay. Before I do that, I do want to say that I've watched you over the years, and you're really always creative, very positive, but you're always coming up with something new that I hadn't anticipated, and with much enthusiasm, and it tends to work very well from all I've seen. So
I appreciate that.
You really do a great job. I really admire the work you do.
Thank you.
At school, the OB group was renaming itself after some interesting processes that we probably shouldn't go into. And finally settled on Leading People and Organizations, which is LP&O or something like that. It's not a name I'm very wild about, but it's a group that Michael Pearson leads now, and he is absolutely amazing. Yeah. Michael is so terrific.
I've been very impressed with him in the few webinars that I've been able to get into.
He gets all kinds of stuff done. He did the Landmark Education Forum a while ago, and then he did the advanced course, and then they did the self-expression and leadership, and now I think he's doing a team one or something. And it's just watching him manage. He's really quite magical now. He just gets out of the way and lets things happen. Very low on taking credit. He's really, really, really good guy. I'm very, very fond of him.
I'm going to run after him for a podcast soon. With your suggestion, I'm going to run after Michael soon and see if we can get him in the conversation.
Well, actually,
because that's quite fascinating.
Do it real soon and ask him if he can talk about the initiative that they're working on right now, one of many, which involves a Sesame Street kind of approach to teaching management.
Wow.
And I'm a little reluctant to say much about it because it's just very, very young. But I just read the script for one of the first things they're going to do, and it's really good. And all I'm doing is standing to the side and applauding and saying, "Go for it! You're doing a terrific job." It's all Michael.
Isn't it exciting?
Kimberly, and a whole bunch of folks here.
Isn't it exciting? Because you and I, Jim, maybe not that last part of the Barnard program poem yet, but we're kind of had a long run here, and to have someone youthful and vigorous and so eclectic and able to make connections and then produce something along the lines of Sesame Street to get intro students interested in our field, that's cool. They're coming. It's great. They're coming. And I think you probably have done a lot to help, Michael. And another way of getting back to you as an expander, you build those connections, and then you don't just use them yourself alone. You always invite people in. Come on in, meet so-and-so, meet so-and-so. Have you always been this way, Jim, or did this come to you midlife? Or
is it okay to use the word asshole in your conversation?
No, we can't say asshole or any of those bad words. No, of course we can't. But who are you referring to? Me?
I have certainly been one for many, many times on many, many instances. Yeah. But I was thinking today when I was looking at the internet, something about teaching the liberal arts and management or something like that, and teaching together. I had the very good luck that when I was a doctoral candidate, the first course I taught was a course I created in an MBA program run by Arthur D. Little, and it was co-taught. It was taught with the fellow I worked with in Africa, a fellow named Joe Vosley. And it was about work that he and I had done in Africa. We did a simulation that ran for about a week or so. It was really a great thing. A project that I'd worked on and he'd worked on. But the point was that my first real teaching, substantive, and I did it a number of times before I went on to teach at Columbia, was co-teaching. Teaching was, and it's been extremely easy for me. Frank Werner and I have co-taught over and over and over again, and I did it at Bell Labs and with Dorothy Marsek and all kinds of fun people, and with Hal Levitt and a whole bunch of, and Rick Vroom. I think Rick and I took together one time. And so for me, teaching with somebody is very, very easy. And I hadn't thought of it until today, that was my first teaching.
But that is a pattern of this expansion again. You could have been very solo, been really brilliant in your classroom, but you learned that you have better Jim Stoner outcomes with others, particularly if they're fun to be with and are smart like you.
Well, I think Dave, that it hadn't really occurred to me at this moment, but I think when you're teaching with somebody else, or you're teaching in the classroom, it's and also I said a few minutes ago about when I was responding to things people had done as chair in a couple of places. That is like improv, which I don't know much about improv. I've never had any training, and I think you may have done a bit of it, or a lot of it. But
I think
improv,
I would.
the one that I do know is whatever happens, you go with that. You accept it and move it. You never go against it. And so it's steady flow. And I think maybe that's awful key to what you do in the classroom. And also when you're teaching with somebody else, you really want to do that. That's key.
Yeah, I mean, if you try to read a script when you're co-teaching, it's like, hey, don't get me off script now. Whereas if you have you were really wonderful at framing things and posing very intriguing questions, the answers of which you don't necessarily know. Why would you? So therefore, when people produce, the feedback from the conversations, I've never seen you and I've watched you. You pull it out and you weave it and you keep it moving. But in a way, what improv is, in my experience, it's beginning a new story, and then as people throw in more ingredients, the story changes, which is fascinating. One day a man with a cane, and the next thing you know, you're telling a story about Egypt. And frankly, I'll make a little preaching here. I would love to have more business students who are able to be improvisational. And the only way I think we can get them there is to allow them to be improvisational within our orbit, whether it's online now or in the classroom, to get them to feel more spontaneous. And don't worry about saying something that makes people look at them. The inhibition has always bugged me, Jim. And, and you seem to be able to free them up and get that expanding going.
I had some wonderful experiences this term, last term actually, when I taught along that line. Let me tell you about my major theme right now is that business schools are teaching business as usual, and that business as usual is destroying the planet. And the real evil we do is in the core courses, where we lay down the business as usual in all courses, driven by the neoliberal narrative out of finance and economics, et cetera. And our upper level courses don't even do rework. They don't even undo what we've done in the core courses. They just do more business as usual. The business case for sustainability is, how do you make more money while you do business as usual? And so we got to throw away those core courses. And last term, I threw away my syllabus in the fall term. For me, it was a fall term, and had the students write 5 essays, email replies to their boss. Did I tell you about that before? Mention that earlier? And
I don't think you.
Eventually, we'll get to the point of my story here. And the first one was. Your boss is, every one of them, essentially, your boss is saying, gee, you've only got 4 hours before you go home. or I leave. So give me what you can do in 4 hours. And the first question is the best argument you can make that climate change is a hoax. The second one is the best argument you can make that climate change is real. The next two were very much into the syllabus, since they're not as interesting. It was, what does traditional management look like, and what does quality management look like? But that was in the context of a guest professor. They went to a session, he talked about it. So it's all all these little essays are in context. The next one was the boss has, they're doing a project for a company like P&G, a consulting project, or AT&T. And the head of sustainability for AT&T has asked your team, they're in teams, they're not doing it for me, they're doing it for another course. Mm-hmm. What is the most serious sustainability problem our company is facing? What should we do about it? And 4 hours and send it, and then they send the essay to everybody. They reflect on what they've written in the essay, and then they compliment somebody who wrote an essay the week before, a previous essay. So an acknowledgement of it. So now we're getting to the real meat. The sixth essay is the boss has gone back to his or her graduate school, maybe graduate school, business school. And the dean has signed up for this initiative, that 100 and change initiative that we were doing, mm-hmm. to transform its curriculum and some of its research within 3 years for $2.4 million, which they're not going to get. Mm-hmm. But the dean has joined that, and he wants to know what he should do, or she should do. And the students write their 4-hour essay on that, share it with everybody. Here's the killer. At the end of it, the seventh one, I get goosebumps when I remember what they did. The seventh one is, the boss, with your permission, has sent all of your essays to his dean or her dean. And she has said, wow, I think you're doctoral level quality. I would like you to consider getting a doctorate with us or someplace else. What I'd like you to do is give me the title of your dissertation that you would do, where you would like to do it, and with whom you would like to do it. And in 4 hours. I read those in almost the last class, close to the last class. And I think it was the night that Sophia Town, who is a brand new member of our faculty, who's done work in mindfulness, did a mindfulness session for us. We kick off every class with meditation, did a mindful session with us. And she's wonderful. She's really, really good. Brand new with us. And I read about 2/3 of the essays before I went into class because of time. And I said, I like your essay so much that I would offer to teach this course for nothing next term. Not everyone was great. Not all of them was great. They were just really, really, really good. And I gave that assignment wondering if it would be crash and burn. I had no idea what they would do.
Talk about improv, huh?
That was wonderful. So that's back to your theme of expansion. I think somebody in that class is going to go on for a PhD. I don't know who it'll be, but I think somebody will.
Can you think of one little tidbit or gem from those essays that gave you that shivery feeling? Something that she or he said?
It was the collection that did. What came through was a number of them had really, in 4 hours, and then, by the way, they told me how long they worked. Part of the assignment is how many hours did you put into it? And they get stuff done in 2 or 3 hours that I can't do in 6 or 7 hours or ever. And what came through was some very specific choices of universities and very specific choices of programs, and identified people, some of whom I recognized by name and some of them I didn't. So some very good doctoral programs were mentioned. And their thesis proposals were pretty good. And but beyond that, I can't give you an exact. I can't tell you the professors or the schools at the moment.
No, but in the realm of a bit beyond business as usual and sustainability, did you kind of give them that, those parameters, or would their dissertation topics be about anything at all that they wanted to have them in?
I gave you no instruction. You heard the whole instructions.
Yep. Did you pick up any who were moved to want to study more deeply the challenges of sustainable practices in business?
Yeah, well, there was some sustainability in the course, because what I'd done was I'd thrown away the course that I had been teaching, except for maybe 3 or 4 of my cases, most of which I've written or used for a long time, that I had to do particular things with. And the course was really about managing for sustainability, and as a first course, a principles of management course. That had some traditional management stuff left over, but the course had a lot of sustainability in it. And their projects they did some projects on sustainability also along the way. But I gave them no coaching at all on the schools or the topics or anything like that.
Wow. That is really exciting. And were these undergraduates or MBAs?
These are undergraduates, second year, sophomore undergraduates.
You are kidding me.
And they blew my mind. It's really good.
If you're willing to throw away a semester's worth of pay, that's a big mind blow.
Well, this course, I didn't know I was going to teach the course until very shortly before it. And I literally, I just said, I can't teach business as usual. I can't, it's too close. And so I literally was walking into class where if the copier had broken down 5 minutes before class, I would not have made it into class for the course materials for 16 weeks. It was holding on by my fingernails. And by the way, I started the course with none of this design. All I knew was I was going to do the first 2 assignments, which I had done before. It's a hoax and it's real. Climate change is a hoax and a real.
Yeah.
And the rest of it was just developed every week.
The
syllabus was just a skeleton. Doesn't resemble at all what we did. But it was fun.
Yeah, but you're still doing such wonderful, I know it's a cliche, on the edge stuff, and you're so excited about it, and you get so much out of it. Going back to Bernard Shaw, I guess that's you, really, isn't it? The top part of that poem, anyway. Give me a purpose that I can. I can't remember it now. I'm older than you, but I wonder if that's really touches in that joyfulness, the youthfulness in a way of your taking that course over like that and making it something so profound, transformational.
And it was a rough road.
Oh no, there's
some things I would do differently for sure.
Well, I'm sure some of the students maybe even been somewhat resistant at first. Hey, wait a minute, just tell me what chapter I'm supposed to study. In fact, speaking of chapters, and you wrote a lot of them when you had your textbooks, which you wrote with Charlie Wankel. Who was the other person you wrote texts with back then, Jim? I'm kind of jumping back for your history when you were introducing management. You wrote with Charlie Wankel, but then you wrote something before your first earliest textbooks. Did you do that one alone?
Well, Charlie and I did 3 editions together, and he was co-author on the 3rd one. He's a fantastically good friend.
Oh, yeah, he's a wonderful guy.
Wonderful guy who just really takes care of people just very well. Wonderfully inclusive. He did some great stuff, but when he was chair of MSR, bringing people in, and everything he's done has been he's a xenophilic. He loves people from other countries also. I've
never heard that. That's a great word. Yeah.
And then for later editions, Ed Freeman and was a co-author. Actually, he did almost all of the later editions. But my name went first for traditional reasons, I think.
Yeah. So for the longest while, you've been helping us, those of us who used your thoughts and in tribute, really, of what you were saying back then. I wonder back then, were you really still pretty much in the business as usual as it was then? We're talking, 70s, 80s, 90s. And then sort of kind of leaned back and said, wait a minute, am I enabling something is going to lead to very poor business in the world?
You're asking for that movement, I think.
The epiphany.
A couple of things. One is the quality management thing was really convinced me that the way we're doing business was not right. But it wasn't as clear to me as it became later about the sustainability thing. A couple of things happened. One was the world was saying early in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, or so, I guess it was, maybe at 80, that you can't do quality management in America. It's Japanese management. And you give all the reasons, et cetera. Then after a while, oh, well, you can do it in manufacturing, but you can't do it in services.
Or healthcare.
And then you can't do it in functions. You can't do it in finance. Mm-hmm. So Frank Warner and I taught a course the year that the Baldrige Prize was announced. And my colleagues and I were not, with the exception of Frank, the management colleagues and I were not seeing the world the same. And their argument was you can't do quality until you lose $2.38 billion the way Ford Motor Company did before it woke up and started doing quality management. Or whatever it was, 2.3. I think it was
a lot of money.
A lot of money. And you can't, and then definitely you can't do it in finance. So we invited the early winners of the Baldrige Prize to come into class and talk about how they were doing finance, sustainability and finance. And we had all the first three winners. We had Motorola, which was just magnificent at that time. And we had I forget, I'm blocking on the other two early winners. We had the chief financial officer of Motorola. We had the chief financial officer of Florida Power and Light when they became the first non-Japanese winner of the Deming Prize, all coming into our class, 16-student class. We tape recorded what they did, wrote it up as little essays, and turned it into a book that we self-published through Primus. And then that led to a bunch of research proposals. The point, people called us up and gave us money to do research. It was really nice. We did some follow-on work. The thing was, it moved me into a vision of what management could be, which I've laid out in something called World Class Managing 2 Pages at a Time.
I remember it very well.
Which is great fun. I think you may have seen that.
I have definitely seen it.
Yeah. And but that was what management could have been. Mm-hmm. Everything was fine about it, except that we're still destroying the planet. Mm-hmm. And after a while, I started realizing we're destroying the planet. A lot of it was sitting at the feet, literally, of Amory Lovins of the Rocky Mountain Institute at Esalen, at Big Sur at Esalen, and some programs, and Helen Henderson and a few others. And I really got that, man, we're in deep doo-doo, and we should do something about it. I guess another angle that came along was kind of fun. I had my one Johnny Carson experience. I was doing a program in Dominican Republic. I don't think I ever told you about that, where folks had used my textbook. And there was like 2,000 people in this big auditorium. And I was a star of the day. And I came down the aisle with everybody standing up and cheering.
Oh, wow.
It was like, holy cow, I like this. This is fun. It never happened again.
It doesn't happen to textbook authors very often.
That was worth it. But during the session, I was using, I used the 7S model a lot. And I used it in that World Class Managing book, which they had read, which they had gotten that as a monograph before the session also, as well as my textbook. And partway through my whole day talk, I can't believe they sat still for all that. The father, who was the head of the university, Jesuit university, or maybe Dominican in Santo Domingo, I forget which order it was. A student said, "What is the 8th?" I never thought about what the 8th.
What a wonderful question!
Yeah, I never thought of it. I thought for a moment, and I said, "I think it's spirituality." And the father, who was he beamed. He really liked that. and it started settling in on me. I decided that was true. That our organizations are soulless. Our business organizations, the way we run them, and they destroy our souls. And what's missing is purpose, a deep purpose, like in that quotation from Shaw.
That's right.
then I started, fairly soon after that, I taught the first seminar on management, spirituality, and organizational excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became management, spirituality, and global sustainability over time. And I taught it because I didn't know what spirituality was. I'm not very religious. Teach at a Jesuit university. I'm not very religious.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but it expanded. I'm going to use the word as we're moving toward the end of our time, but it expanded Jim Stoner. And going through those sequences, going through the realizations that quality management, yes, but if it's used to make businesses even more exploitative of the environment, it's not all that good. So, but Dr. Duran himself would be nodding right now, Jim, at you and saying, Jim, I've always felt it's about responsibility, broad social global responsibility. He always wanted people to get well beyond those methods and tools. And I think probably in some ways he was disappointed that it became commercialized to the extent that it kind of get captured again. And people could say, you can only use it here, but you can't use it there. But let's go back to you as we're moving toward the end, though. You are continually growing and expanding as your practice relates more strongly than ever to your purpose, Jim, to the Barnard quote, your purpose. Peeking out ahead, do you see another few evolutions that you'd like to go through? Or do you want to join me in pensive retirement, which only lasted for me technically about a week, but
yeah, I don't see, you don't look very retired to me.
So what's ahead for Jim Stoner?
Well, my current effort is to survive. Right now, I've got so many things I'm trying to do that I'm just really scared silly sometimes and worn out sometimes. I tell you what my current focus is, and it's a big deal, and I don't know if we can help you to do it. The core courses, we need to transform all of the core courses. And the folks at Fordham are teaching designing with a lot of collaborative work and some very interesting stuff going on, a principles of management course that's aligned with the need for a sustainable world. And it rejects the neoliberal narrative deeply. Michael Pearson's been great at that. This whole group is terrific. Frank Werner and I have Frank's finished with a little bit of help from me, our textbook on finance, which is Finance for a Sustainable World or something like that. And it rejects the purpose of the firm is to maximize shareholder wealth. And it rejects the neoliberal narrative. And it admits that we are not smart enough to construct contracts for CEOs that will cause them to manage for the long term. Instead, they can constantly manage for today's share price or the share price of the day that they're I forget the word for the deals they have from shares. I'm blocking on that. They're options.
Stock options.
Options come due, whatever it is available. And we have to transform marketing. And I'm working with people who are doing all of those kinds of things, accounting, etc. And they're doing all the work, but I'm just kind of on the edge, kind of feeling good about what they're doing. But Frank is teaching a course and has been teaching about. We'll teach an intro to a finance course that says the purpose of the firm is not to maximize shareholder wealth, which is a fundamental problem across all business schools, is that paradigm has basically gotten dug in.
Oh yeah, and we've worked it in too deep, but I think, let's hope, there's a lot of reasons to be fearful of the global pandemics and all these other huge disturbances in our comfort level. But let's hope, though, and I'm counting on young people like those you just talked about to say, no, sir, we know what business does now, the way it's been done. We don't have anything to do with it. If you can bring me in and let me renew a business and get it more purposeful, I'm there. But otherwise, I'll start my own. That's why I've been involved with social enterprise here in Connecticut for the last 12 years. Young people make that choice. Hey, I'd rather have my values represent, the purpose of this business than someone that's written them up on a plaque, or put them on a logo sheet. So we're getting there, Jim, and please don't give up ever. well beyond the time when you're saying this is too much. It's not too much, because you are really going to be doing something if you can, not if, as you pull this off at Stoner, you and your larger group of people who are willing now to sit down and make those very tough choices. That example from Fordham is going to shake up a few other places and a few other places. And now we've got a lot of circumstances out there that are making it such that faculties are going to look around and say, are we on the historical side of our careers, or can we be part of some place that's going somewhere and is in concert with the future, what the future is going to determine as important in business? So do you plan on sticking around?
Yeah, I think so. It's a lot of fun. The exciting thing is that a lot of schools are realizing that they can't keep teaching business as usual.
Yes.
We're not unique at all. We're just part of a movement. But for a young or an old faculty member, for any faculty member, the intellectual challenge of teaching marketing for a sustainable world, that's got to be entirely different. For finance, it's been really, we put us in great touch with John Fullerton and other really good people in that. But finance has got to be so different. But the way to do it is to start teaching it, in my judgment. Just start teaching it, do the best you can. And as you do that, just as when you write a textbook, when you do that, you start finding all kinds of research questions, all kinds of research opportunities. And you have the chance to be the first person. Over and over again, you'd be the first person there. And those are the people who get cited forever. So in a way, it's a great way to build a career, is to do what's undoable undone by anybody else. Is teach a course in marketing. It truly is for a sustainable world, not make waste faster and faster for the richer and richer, which is what we teach now.
Wow. Do the undoable. I think I'm going to hang that up on the caption for this conversation, Jim, because you have always been doing the undoable until people say, oh my God, it's doable. Stoner can do it. It's doable. So good for you. Thank you so much.
For innovation and sustainability, because I'll send you a separate email, because that's something that we've identified as something we want to dig into more deeply. And I've been trying to do it for 5 years.
Okay. I'm going to just stop the recording, but not stop our conversation. I just want to thank you once again, Jim, for a very lively, I think 45 minutes. It seems like 5, but you're wonderful to talk with. And I'm sure people are going to read when they listen to this.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Practice Podcasts, where we discuss practice with a capital P. If you'd like to hear more, listen in on Spotify, Podomatic, and Apple Podcasts, or go to inactionresearch.com/podcasts-page. And if you'd like to learn more about social inaction and the nature of practice, head over to inactionresearch.com for more information. Thank you for supporting this show. We look forward to hearing from you soon.